Well, here we are. It's in the middle of July, and we've got all kinds of problems. Here we are in Phoenix, Arizona. Now, we're just the #1 destination for over a decade for in-migration. So people are moving to Phoenix left and right, more so than any county in the United States, Maricopa County. Now, Dallas is getting a little bit more than right, but there's got 4 counties there. There's only one here. And between those two, Dallas and Phoenix, why, goodness gracious, there's enormous growth going on. But the last 3 or 4 weeks, things have really become turmoil. Now, we've seen interest rates almost double in 6 months. This has caused real problems. So, I represent mostly investors. So we can talk about the problems we have with investors and where we're going. But also, we need to talk about investors' children and their staff as to what they need to do, because everybody needs a place to live. And we have some decisions. If you're coming here to Phoenix, or you're going to Dallas or Southern Florida, where business is booming, you've got to make a decision, because there's only 2 places you can go. You're either going to rent or you're going to buy. So let's talk about this. Let me go to my very first slide, and let's just start this presentation. So as you know, I use timing models. Now, the timing models have been absolutely incredibly accurate. So are we in a third real estate correction? Because, my timing model saw the 2 of them. I didn't see a third. So the timing models absolutely positively nailed the March 2018 correction. That was a fairly strong correction, about 6 months. We knew we were going to have a second one that came in January of 2020, a very short correction that coincided with the very short recession caused by the government when they did the COVID virus shutdown. That was the second correction. So are we in the third correction right now? Or are we going into a cycle completion? Let me go to my very next slide. Let's just talk about what we see. This is very important right now. Now you have to look at this. I'm going to tell you this is the home builder sentiment and the home buyer sentiment. And I'm going to tell you the home builders are getting very scared. First off, look at this here, home buyer sentiment. This is down to a record. It's actually -78. It went so far, it went right off our chart. And that is at an historical high for first-time home buyers in the negative. It's terrible. There is no home buyer and first-time home buyer going to be buying a house anytime soon. This is very bad. And you can see this just plunged. It wasn't like it gradually got worse. It just fell off the cliff in like the last couple, 2-3 months. So this has really caught everybody a little bit by surprise. That's why, is this a correction or is this a cycle completion? And look at the 4 home builders up here. Now, the home builders are building homes that they sold a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago. It's taking forever for these home builders to bring their product to market. And now all of a sudden, the interest rates that they thought that their buyers are going to be getting have doubled. A lot of them can't qualify, and they're getting specs. I'm going to tell you right now, they didn't build these for specs. They build these to deliver to their buyers. So now they're scared to death that they're going to be getting a lot of specs. And why would you want specs when you see home buyer sentiment dropping to historical lows? So the builders are not opening up more developments. They're limiting the amount of exposure they have. They're not building very much anymore. So there's no supply coming to market. Now, what we are seeing is everybody who was thinking of selling and has a profit, they're bringing it to market. They want to get it sold. Now, that's inventory. That's not supply. So inventory is coming up. The supply is still very limited, particularly in the big markets of Texas, Florida, and Arizona. Supply is very limited. Now, the builders are going to be getting some more, but these were built for someone. So the people who are going to buy those properties have to go somewhere. So again, they only have 2 choices, either buy or rent. So if you're not going to buy, look at this down here. If you're not going to buy, that means they're going to rent, and someone else is going to take that. So this supply is going to be absorbed pretty radically. Let me go to what the real question is. Where are we in our cycles? Is this a correction or is this a cycle completion? Now, I have to tell you, I put a couple different corrections. Now, this is from the Mueller group, and this shows very, very well. Typically, when you're in the recession, this is when things have really gone bad. We did this in 08, 09, 10, and 11. We started getting better. Then you go into recovery. So we've had a long recession. Typically, in a cycle completion, that's about 4 years. So it's a reasonably long time. Then you go into phase one, which is the number one quadrant. That's where you start to get a little bit better. There's no new construction going on. You're starting to get some absorption in what was left over. Then you go up into phase two, and that's where I think we are. We're in phase two. We were going to go into phase three. So in phase two, you have declining vacancy. Of course, that's exactly where we are. And you have new construction. The builders were doing fairly well, but they were still being very restrained. So it's not like they were going crazy. And then you go into phase three. Now, we were heading into phase three, which is where you start seeing a whole bunch of construction. You know how it is, whether you're mining or farming or opening up coffee shops. Builders are no different, so the builders build. So if you make a lot of money on one building, gosh, let's build 10 of them, make a huge amount of money. So typically what happens is they overbuild. You get increasing vacancy, you got increasing specs sitting up, and then you go into recession. You have a lot of increasing vacancy, and you start seeing more problems, and that's into recession. So we never went into phase three. We are in phase two, and we're heading, it appears like maybe we're going into phase four. We're going to skip three, which means that maybe this is a correction. So let's just talk about that for a second. Now, the Federal Reserve is raising interest rates into an obviously declining market. All you have to do is follow any of our work. You can see that all the commodities are dropping off. Dr. Copper is dropped like 30% in the last 90 days. You can see that with wheat. You can see with lumber. Lumber has dropped like 60%. We're seeing a lot of the basic materials, the aluminum, iron ore, nickel are all falling off, and that's what you use for the industrials, and that is dropping like a rock. You're starting to see slowdown globally across the globe. So it looks like we're heading into a recession, and the Federal Reserve is raising interest rates into an incredibly slowing, just like the brakes put on, economy. So that could cause major problems. That's why I'm thinking we miss quadrant three, and that's on my economic model. I don't use that very, very often. We use that. It's someone else's research, but it just follows. I mean, it just tells you what the quadrants are. It's pretty easy to follow. Let me go to my next slide, and let's just talk about that. So I think we are here. Now, this is my timing model. This is my proprietary timing model. So we use both of them. We often talk about this. I think we're in this, the final, we got the accumulation phase, and then we have the final blow-off phase here. And I think we're entering phase three. So phase one, we absolutely positively correctly identified these two corrections. And we went into the accumulation phase. And I believe we're still here, which would lead me to think in my timing model that we still have about 24 months in the timing. But here's the deal with models. They work until they don't work. Now, this could really be a problem. So here's what I think may happen. If the Federal Reserve relents and says, you know what, I'm starting to get scared. The economy is really dropping radically. You can see that a lot of the commodities are dropping. So I've been saying we're going to get a moderation in inflation. I've been absolutely wrong for the last 3-4 months, but I think it's coming now. You can see it in the producer price index. The at the producer level. We're starting to see raw material coming in lower. Oil certainly is coming off. So when you start seeing energy start coming down, why you can see that we're going to get a lowering. Now, I'm not saying that the inflationary cycle is over. I'm just saying at this juncture, it's slowed down. So we printed a 9.1% national. We just had some statistics that here in Phoenix, we went over 12%. It was like 12.2% for June of 2022 here in Phoenix, Arizona. I haven't looked at the official reading, but I did see a headline number that big. So I think if that's the case, we may be getting close to a peak, but it's not going to go away. However, we're going to get a slowdown. And recessions are killed by a recession kills inflation. So this is probably what's going to happen. We're seeing that the cost of things are starting to slow down. And the Federal Reserve is raising interest rates into a significantly slowing economy. Now, my concern is that they don't take their foot off the brake. Now, if they do take their foot off the brake, we could go back. Let me just get this. We could go back and finish this. So, and that's a possibility. So if they do stop, that means we had a third correction, which I didn't see. That's why it wasn't on my phase. And it didn't show. So maybe it's a problem with my model. I'm not sure. But if that happens, then we're going to get significantly higher prices. Now, if they don't, then we're going to go here. That means that we had an abbreviated cycle. And I've been told, that I interview Dr. Nenner. Dr. Nenner says that oftentimes cycles are affected by much more powerful longer-term cycles, and that may be what's in operation. I haven't been able to find that, but that may very well be, and it might be the interest rate cycle that's causing that, in which case it's abbreviating. This is not going to be the normal 18.5-year cycle. Looks like it's going to be a pretty short one, so about 16 plus years, in which case then we're going to complete, and we're going to have some discounting across the nation. So prices very well could come down. We're starting to see that here in the mountains. I mean, we've got Flagstaff, Arizona, in a region, in the mountain region. It was like the number 3 overpriced market in the United States. And you're seeing prices drop, and they're not dropping 5 and 10. They're dropping now 50, 60, 70, 80, $90,000. So there is an adjustment period that's coming back. So we are seeing that. So that still could be a correction. However, either one of them causes problems and concerns for the buyers. You can see that the buyers have just come off the market. So what does that mean? Let me go to my very next slide and let me see if we can talk about that. And here's the problem. We still have a shortage of homes. We still have a shortage. Where is everyone going to live? Where are they going to live? They only have 2 choices, rent or buy. Now, if you're getting priced out of the market, which is possible, I mean, if you raise double interest rates, well, you know what you had planned on paying and what you qualified for, you may no longer be able to do so, in which case that house you were going to buy, and that's the trouble with the builders, they thought that they were going to buy, has gone away. So that means you have to rent. And there's very limited supply of rentals, and this is across the nation. So I personally think that it's going to be a very, very strong rental season for those that have rental properties. I think we're going to do very, very well. I think we're going to have increasing demand and a lot of pressure on entry-level homes, and of course on rentals. Now, rentals are A, B, or C. My thoughts are that the B's and C's are going to do incredibly well. So we as investors are probably going to do well. I think our cash flow is probably pretty secure. Again, we've been talking about the fact that we want to maximize the tenant quality and not necessarily maximize the rent. I'm not saying we want to give the rent away, but we certainly want to be on the low end of the range. That way, if we can, pick and choose, get the people with a little higher credit scores, a little more reserves, a little better job history, and preserve our credit and cash flow for ourselves. We've been talking about that. We gave a forewarning of that maybe 3 or 4 or 5, 6 months ago. We've been talking about tenant quality versus rent. And of course, I think that's probably a very, very good idea for us to consider doing. Let me go to my next slide. I think we're going to be just fine. But now here's the meat and potatoes of this whole thing. So let me just put this in. Now, as you know, I talked to Dr. Nenner. We just did a long video. We're doing another video. We're going to do a private video. This is not going to be on. This is not going to be shared. So if you want to get involved with that, you want to talk to info@charlesnenner.com, and that's going to be a private video and a webinar. It's going to be a live webinar where you can actually talk to Dr. Nenner. And if you want to ask some questions, they have a different fee structure for that. We obviously, if we have 100 people asking questions, we can't get them all. So we have to work on something like that. But it's going to be a very, very interesting one. Now, we just did one about a week or so ago, and it's very, very good. I highly suggest that you watch that. It's my Charles Nenner interview, Nowhere to Hide. And if you like my videos, I would love you to subscribe and hit that subscribe button. Your comments are always really, really welcome when you look at our videos. Really, really helps. I don't know why that is, but the algorithms just love comments and they love subscriptions. So if you could help us out with that. Now, here's what I gleaned from our conversation is that I think there's going to be long-term persistent inflation. Now, Dr. Nenner thought, no question about this, he thought inflation was running to 12% and was going to be long-term. When long-term means several years. He thought interest rates were going to be going up for 30 years. That would be the long-term interest rate cycle that we finished just a few years ago. Now we're going on to the upside. So those two factors will decimate a bond portfolio. So if you're my age, you know, you're not going to be able to get any income from your bond portfolio because it will just absolutely destroy it. So that's not a place for you to go. So you don't want to be lending money into this higher inflation and higher interest rates. That's a losing strategy. So let's do the converse of that and think about borrowing money. Now, the reason that the government likes to see inflation because they borrowed all this money and they're going to inflate the economy. They're going to pay that money off with much cheaper dollars. So why don't you do that? Why don't you do the same thing the government's doing? Pay it back with much cheaper dollars. I think that's a winning strategy to do so. Now, we don't want to get carried away with this. We want to make sure that we never, ever, ever jeopardize the asset. We want to make sure we have a cash flow. So we want to make sure maybe we've got some free and clear properties. We want to put 30, 35%, maybe something very, very modest on these, but get some cash in your pocket, and then we'll be paying these back with much lower dollars. So in my asset class, rentals are incredibly in demand. So I would still suggest, where are we? Do we want to buy these? I think probably in the next 40, 50, 60 days, I think we have a window here that the economy improves. I think by September, October, November, December, I think the economy probably drops into recession. I mean, that's just my feeling. I think we have a very powerful cycle that's abrogating the cycles. So if that's the case, then we're going to have some terrific buys. And of course, we're buying these for cash flow. Keep in mind, we're income investors. We like to see our properties go up. But in my asset class, we can get cash flowing rentals, put income into your portfolio, income that you can live on. You know, a spendable income for yourself. Use very, very fixed rate. Now be sure it's fixed rate. We don't want this adjustable rate because we're going to have higher interest rates. So if we get a modest interest rates or a modest amount of mortgage with a fixed interest rate, the tenants will pay that off for us over time, and they'll pay it off with inflated dollars. It'll preserve your purchasing power as rents increase with inflation, and your tenant is going to be paying down the principal balance, growing your equity until, of course, your property's paid off. And listen, I know I talk to baby boomers all the time and say, oh, you know, I'm 65 or 70 years old. You know, I don't want to take an amortizing mortgage. Well, I'm going to tell you, what if you grow aged as 95 or 100 years old. What if you do that? Go watch my video, 82 and Broke. You know, it's a terrible video. It's a true story. So you may very, very well live to be 95 or 100 years old, and that would be terrific. And you're going to come up with properties that are free and clear. Your loans are going to get paid off. Your cash flow will increase. So here's another, it's a little esoteric. So let me just make sure I do this. I hope if I'm not doing this clear enough, just make a comment to us in there, and we'll try and clarify, because it's a little difficult. When you're in a 9% inflation, which is just what we just printed, if you can get a 5 or 6% 30-year fixed rate mortgage in a 9% inflationary environment, that means that your real rate of interest is actually negative. You're actually paying a negative 3%. So if you get a 6% long-term fixed rate mortgage, it's amortizing in a 9% inflation, the real rate of return, real rate of interest that you're paying is a negative 3%. So it's probably a pretty good strategy. The other thing is, if you want to be incredibly conservative and keep everything in cash, we lose 9% by just leaving it in the bank, because you're not getting any money. So maybe you get 1 or 2%. So we just have to subtract that. So in a negative, when you're in a 9% inflationary environment and you get 2%, then your real rate return, you're losing 7%. So this is not so good. So that's part of the strategy. So I think that you can do this. Please, this is not a one-size-fits-all strategy. We need to really talk to your financial planner, talk to your accountant. We're more than happy to do that. Let's get involved with a good mortgage broker so we can discuss what the rates are and how we can fit in and how we can structure this for you, because it is not one size fits all. Now, if you're doing a 1031 exchange, I think you're just fine. It's money that's already at risk. You know, you're selling a property that probably was inflated, and you're buying a property that's probably inflated, but the tax ramifications are so onerous that it's very well worth doing. Putting new money out, we want to talk to you about what our returns are going to be and what the strategy is. So you're welcome to reach me, michael@michaeldouville.com. Let me go to my next slide, and we'll give you some numbers here, and we can get on with this. Now, look at. I'm in the real estate business for 50 years. We have a really big portfolio that we handle. We have lots and lots of big companies, people who have pension funds, and people that are celebrities and things that we do business with. We have tons and tons and tons of, individuals, that are involved with us, and we try and help you any way we can. I have an enormous amount of real estate agents. That's really interesting, because I'm in the real estate business and have a lot of real estate agents that come to me, and we help them find properties. Now, my license is held with West USA Realty in Arizona. West USA Realty is like the 16th largest brokerage in the United States. I think they did $5.3 billion last year. They are very, very secure. They do all of our back office. They do all our compliance. They make sure our paperwork is great, and paperwork is absolutely just awful. Paperwork is just terrible. Anyway, if you'd like to speak to me, we do free consultations. We give you a 1-hour free consultation. Generally, we can do everything we can. You're welcome to have certainly your spouse, your financial advisor, your accountant, whoever you like. We'll sit together and we'll brainstorm, see what's best for you and how we can fit in to increase cash flow in your portfolio. You can reach me at michael@michaeldouville.com. If you have any questions or comments, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to us. Send those comments to us, and we'll try and get it back. My very, very best to you guys. Bye-bye now.